I think probably one that we get asked about a lot that's interesting is like, what's this deal with AI? There's been unbelievable amounts of
Yeah.
investment going
People
in.
spending
Companies
on
are,
OpenAI? Are they spending on other types of vendors? What's happening there?
yep. Maybe let's start there on OpenAI. So I think classically, if you looked at the data, there was one name that mattered, and it was OpenAI. One of the things that came out in the most recent quarterly report was Anthropic. In Q1, they were about 4% of that big pie, pretty small. Q2, 17%.
Oh my gosh. And I assume the
Wild.
pie is also growing. So this is pretty impressive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is very impressive. And I think a lot of this came from part of why the industry is so competitive, which is with one line of code, you can switch where the network call goes.
Yeah,
You
that's
can
right.
call this library.
Right. So if you have an API and Anthropic is slightly cheaper, slightly better, you might as well just try it for 30% of your things and see how's it going.
Yep. And so that is like a big one of like there is a real reason for why these vendors are so hotly competitive, which is that traffic is switching, things are moving, so it's very
Got
active,
it.
and we'll have
And they go from 4 to 17. They could go back to 4 if someone else is slightly better, right? It's very, very competitive. It's very easy to switch. There's no real lock-in right now.
100%. And that's like a pretty important thing for just AI vendors in general to be thinking about as the space is moving. I think just on AI for a minute, we can move to other kind of categories. It's becoming much stickier. I think if you were to look at the retention data of merchants, if you were to go and look in, call it a year ago, 2 years ago, for businesses that tried out an AI vendor, only 40% of them would still be paying that same vendor a year later. So from July 22 to July 23.
Yeah.
From July
Well, by the way,
23 to
ChatGPT came out in November kind of 22, which is, we're taping this in October 24, so still less than 2 years ago. So you're really talking about pre-ChatGPT, before that kind of like cognitive revolution came in everyone's head.
Exactly. And you nailed it. The products are getting better, and the desire to use these things are getting stronger. So if you look at that same, all AI vendors broadly, it jumped from 40% retention to 67% retention, and every single one of these cohort curves is getting a lot stronger. So these products are getting stickier. Things are moving from card to invoices. And so people are signing long-term contracts. So I think really the broader point is they're going from like things that people are testing to actually deeply operational. And you can see a lot of interesting things too. I think if you look kind of more broadly, probably like the biggest story that we've seen in B2B payments for this year is just been the return to growth. The spend.
Oh, really? So we're now spending again, like we're not cutting as much? And not just on software, but on other types of things, travel, other things?
Yes. I think for a long time, businesses, especially 2022, 2023, dealt immediately with the rising cost of capital and had to, capital markets were fairly closed and you had to go lean. But now as rates are coming back down and just valuations are increasingly tied to how much profit will this business do in 10 years, 20 years from now, the biggest driver of that is growth. And so you see spend on advertising coming up very significantly. Some of that is cost of ads going up too. It's not just people are growing, but I think for business that that's heavy.